I swear this is just a friendship, my wife promised as I noticed her secretive late-night texts. One night, I followed her to a restaurant where she was introducing a stranger to a baby as our little one. I never imagined I'd be the kind of man to follow his wife around, let alone write about it for strangers on the internet. I thought our life was pretty typical, nothing extraordinary, nothing particularly wrong. We'd been married for 15 years, had a teenage son about to go off to college, and spent most evenings catching up on shows or planning for our weekends. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. Rachel wasn't just my wife, she was my best friend. We were the kind of couple that people said looked like they had it all together. So, when she started acting different, I wasn't sure how to handle it. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work could be demanding for both of us. She was a real estate agent, always juggling clients, while I worked long hours as a mechanical engineer. The changes were small at first. Rachel had always been a little glued to her phone, it came with the job, but now, it felt different. She started smiling at her screen in ways she didn't when texting me. And the worst part? She'd tilt the phone away if I walked into the room. I'd hear her phone buzz late at night, and she'd rush to check it. One time, I caught a glimpse of the name, Jenna. "Who's Jenna?" I asked her casually one night. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, just a friend from yoga," she said, not even looking up. "She's having a rough time. I'm just trying to be there for her." I didn't press it. Why would I? She was my wife. I trusted her. But as the weeks passed, the distance between us started growing. It was subtle at first, little things like her taking longer to get ready, laughing at texts when she thought I wasn't looking, and dodging questions about her day. It wasn't like Rachel to be so secretive. Then there was the night she came home late. She claimed she'd been out with Jenna, but she didn't smell like she'd been at a casual dinner with a friend. Her perfume was too strong, her lipstick too fresh. I asked her how her night was, and she brushed me off with a vague, "It was fine. Nothing exciting." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was this gnawing feeling in my gut I couldn't ignore. Something was off. It all came to a head one Friday night. I was sitting in the living room when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs, and for the first time, I let myself look. I know I shouldn't have. I know it was wrong. But curiosity got the better of me. The text was from Jenna. Or, at least, that's what her phone said. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight." He's excited too. My stomach dropped. Who was he? And why did Rachel need to see him? When she came downstairs, dressed in a black dress I hadn't seen in years, I didn't say anything. I just watched as she grabbed her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and said she was meeting Jenna for dinner. She left before I could find the words to ask her about the text. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door. My thoughts were racing, but one question kept coming back: why would she lie to me? I didn't want to be the kind of man who spied on his wife. I didn't want to believe she was capable of lying. But something in me snapped. I grabbed my keys and decided to follow her. Her car led me downtown to a small, upscale restaurant. It was the kind of place we used to go on anniversaries, back when we still made time for date nights. I parked a few spaces away and watched her get out of the car. She looked nervous, glancing around as she walked inside. I hesitated for a moment before following her in. The restaurant was dimly lit, with soft music playing in the background. I spotted her almost immediately. She was sitting at a corner table with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, well-dressed, and confident in a way that made me feel small. Rachel leaned in close as they talked, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, watching my wife with another man. Then, a woman walked up to their table, holding a baby. Rachel stood up and smiled as the woman handed her the baby. My wife held that child like it was her own, cooing and laughing as she rocked it in her arms. I moved closer, hiding behind a pillar so I could hear them. What I heard made my blood run cold. Rachel looked at the man and the woman and said, "I just can't believe how much he looks like you. Isn't he perfect?" She turned to the baby and whispered, "Our little one." I don't remember how I got back to my car. I don't remember driving home. All I know is that I sat in the driveway for what felt like hours, trying to piece together what I'd just seen. Who was that man? Who was the baby? And why on earth would Rachel call it our little one? When she came home later that night, I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Who was he? I asked, my voice shaking. And don't tell me it was Jenna, because I saw you. I saw the baby. Her face went pale, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, she started to cry. "It's not what you think," she said. I can explain. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hear her out. But part of me already knew the truth. I stared at Rachel, waiting for her to explain. The silence between us stretched so long that I felt like I was suffocating. Finally, she wiped her tears and began to speak. "It's not an affair," she said quickly. "I swear, it's not. That man, his name is Greg. We used to date before I met you. The baby isn't mine, I promise. It's his and his ex's. He reached out to me a few months ago, asking for help. His ex left him, and he didn't know who else to turn to." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Help with what?" I asked. "What does that have to do with calling the baby our little one?" Rachel looked down, fiddling with her wedding ring. I don't know why I said that," she stammered. "I guess I was just trying to comfort him. He's been struggling as a single dad, and I felt sorry for him." Her explanation sounded hollow. "So, you've been sneaking around, lying to me, and meeting this man in secret because you feel sorry for him? Do you have any idea how this looks, Rachel?" "It's not like that," she insisted. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react like this." I couldn't believe her nerve. "React like this? You mean questioning my wife when she spends her nights with another man, holding his baby, and calling it hers?" "Yeah, I think any husband would react like this." That night, I slept on the couch, if you can call it sleeping. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The trust we'd built over 15 years felt shattered, and I couldn't shake the image of her with that baby, smiling like it was her entire world. The next morning, Rachel tried to act like everything was fine. She made coffee, asked if I wanted breakfast, and avoided bringing up the night before. I let her play her part, but in my mind, I'd already made a decision. If she wasn't going to come clean, I was going to find the truth myself. I started small. While Rachel was out showing houses, I went through her phone. I hated invading her privacy, but I couldn't live with the lies. What I found only confirmed my suspicions. There were dozens of messages between her and Greg, many of them emotional and overly familiar. They weren't outright romantic, but they were far from innocent. She'd been meeting him regularly, helping him adjust to fatherhood and offering support that went far beyond what a friend should provide. Then I saw it, a message from Greg: "Thank you for being here for me and, baby's name. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're practically family." Practically family. That was all I needed to hear. Over the next few weeks, I kept my suspicions to myself. I played the part of the oblivious husband, letting Rachel think I'd accepted her flimsy story. Meanwhile, I started gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator to dig into Greg's background and Rachel's interactions with him. The investigator didn't disappoint. He found receipts for expensive dinners Rachel had paid for, photos of them together at the park with the baby, and even an afternoon where they'd visited a baby supply store together. But the real kicker came when the investigator uncovered Greg's financial situation. He wasn't just a struggling single dad, he was drowning in debt. And guess who'd been helping him out? Rachel. Our joint account had multiple unexplained withdrawals that matched up with purchases Greg had made. She was funding his life while lying to me about Jenna. I knew I couldn't let this go unpunished. Rachel had betrayed my trust, stolen from our family, and humiliated me. So, I decided to hit her where it would hurt the most, her pride. I began by quietly separating our finances. I opened a new account, transferred my paychecks, and changed the passwords on all our shared accounts. I also met with a divorce lawyer to draw up the necessary paperwork. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger just yet. First, I wanted Rachel to see the consequences of her actions. One Friday evening, I told her I had a work event and wouldn't be home until late. In reality, I was sitting in my car, parked near Greg's house. Sure enough, Rachel arrived a short time later, dressed up and carrying a bag of groceries. I waited for her to go inside before calling the PI. He was waiting nearby with his camera, ready to document everything. The next morning, I confronted Rachel with the evidence. "I know everything," I said, throwing the folder of photos and bank statements onto the table. "I know about the money, the dinners, the lies. You've been funneling our family's money to a man who's nothing but a con artist." Her face turned pale as she looked through the folder. "I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't bother," I said coldly. "You've already done enough damage. I've already filed for divorce. And just so you know, I've contacted the bank and frozen the account you've been using to fund Greg. He won't be getting another penny from me." Rachel started crying, but I felt nothing but relief. For years, I'd put her happiness above my own, trusting her completely. Now, I saw her for what she really was, someone who didn't value me or our marriage. The cherry on top came a week later. I sent Greg a message from Rachel's phone, pretending to be her. I told him she'd decided to end their friendship and wouldn't be helping him anymore. Then, I included a photo of the divorce papers I'd filed, making it clear that his free ride was over. Greg tried to reach out to Rachel, but by then, I'd blocked his number from her phone. She was left to clean up the mess she'd created, alone. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized. I kept the house, most of our savings, and custody of Max, our dog. Rachel moved in with her sister and, from what I hear, hasn't been able to find a steady job since leaving real estate. As for Greg, the PI found out he'd skipped town, likely looking for his next victim. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Rachel's betrayal hurt, but it also taught me an important lesson: never ignore your gut. Trust is earned, not given, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Now, I'm focusing on myself and my son, who's thriving in college. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine, and for the first time in years, I feel free.